without direction. Through streets buzzing with life, through parks where children laughed and parents watched with tired devotion. Each sound felt sharper, more real. He felt like someone who had been underwater too long and was only now breaking the surface. By evening, he found himself at the train station. He didn't remember deciding to go there, only the pull of movement, of not staying trapped in the same place where he'd learned to run. He bought a ticket to the town Sarah had moved to years ago, the one she'd mentioned in passing during their last conversation. A coastal town, quiet, distant. He remembered teasing her about it, saying she would get bored. He wondered now if she'd gone there to learn how to breathe again. The train ride was long. Noah watched the landscape change, his reflection faint in the glass. He thought about who he had been then, how fear had disguised itself as logic. He had told himself leaving was the responsible choice. He saw now that it had been the easiest one. Night had fallen by the time he arrived. The air smelled of salt and wet earth. The sound of the sea rolled in steady waves, unhurried, as if time moved differently here. He found the address with trembling hands. A small house near the shore, light glowing softly from the windows. He stood there longer than necessary, heart pounding, fighting the urge to turn back. Showing up did not erase the past. But running again would only deepen it. He knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Sarah stood there, wrapped in a sweater, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Noah," she said, her voice calm but guarded. "I saw the video," he replied. "I'm so sorry it took me this long." She studied him, searching his face for something. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the house was simple and warm. A life built slowly, intentionally. They sat across from each other, the space between them heavy with unspoken words. "I never meant to hurt you," Noah said finally. "I was afraid of failing. Afraid of being needed." Sarah nodded. "I know. I was afraid too. That's why I stayed quiet for so long." They talked until the hours blurred. About the baby, about grief, about the ways time changes pain without erasing it. Tears came, and with them, an unexpected sense of relief. Truth, once spoken, lost some of its power to destroy. "I don't know what happens now," Noah said softly. "I don't either," Sarah replied. "But this feels like a beginning, not an ending." When he left, the sea was calm, moonlight reflecting on the water. Noah walked back toward the station with a strange lightness in his chest. The past would always be part of him. But for the first time, it no longer defined his. The screen went black. Adam sat frozen long after the video ended, the phone dark in his hand. His heart pounded, then slowed, each beat heavy with realization. He thought of all the times he had walked away from discomfort, from conflict, believing distance was a form of self-preservation. He saw now the wreckage that belief had left behind. He didn't go to work that day. He walked instead, through streets he'd known for years but never really seen. The city felt sharper, more vivid. A child laughed somewhere. A man argued into his phone. Life pressed on, indifferent to his private reckoning. By afternoon, he found himself at the old train station. He hadn't been there since the night Lena left, the platform slick with rain, her back turned as she boarded without looking at him. He remembered thinking that there would be time later, that distance would clarify things. Distance had only hollowed him out. He sat on a bench, the metal cold through his coat, and let the memories wash over him. Regret burned, but beneath it was something else, quieter and more dangerous. Responsibility. The understanding that love was not just a feeling but a series of choices, many of which he had failed to make. That evening, Adam booked a ticket to the coast. The train ride took 6 hours. He watched the landscape change from concrete to open fields, then to the dull shimmer of water in the distance. He rehearsed what he might say if he saw her, then discarded every speech as inadequate. Apologies felt small in the face of years. Explanations felt hollow. When he arrived, the town smelled exactly as she'd described. Salt and damp wood and something faintly sweet, like wildflowers crushed underfoot. The streets were narrow, lined with low houses painted in soft colors. He walked until he found the address she'd once sent him long ago, back when they still believed in staying connected. The porch light was on. A cat lifted its head as he approached, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Adam hesitated, heart racing, then knocked. It took a moment. Then the door opened. Lena stood there, a sweater pulled tight around her, hair shorter than he remembered. For a second, neither of them spoke. The years between them stretched and trembled. "You came," she said finally, her voice steady but surprised. "I saw the video," he replied. "I couldn't not come." She studied him, as if measuring the truth of his words. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the house was warm, filled with the quiet sounds of a life lived carefully. They sat at a small table. The cat leapt onto a chair and promptly ignored them. "I didn't expect to see you in person," Lena said, wrapping her hands around a mug. "I thought the video would be the end." "I hope it doesn't have to be," Adam said, then winced. "Not in the sense of starting over. I needed to look at you and say I'm sorry. For leaving. For not asking. For being afraid." She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "I don't need you to fix the past," she said. "I made peace with it. But hearing you take responsibility matters." They talked for hours. About the baby, briefly, gently. About the people they'd become. About the ways grief changed shape over time. There were tears, and laughter, and long silences that felt surprisingly comfortable. As the night deepened, Adam realized something that frightened and steadied him at once. He could not undo what had happened. He could not reclaim the years or the child they never met. But he could choose differently now. When he stood to leave, Lena walked him to the door. "I don't know what this means," she said softly. "But I'm glad you came." "So am I," he replied. He stepped out into the cool night, the sound of the sea steady and patient nearby. For the first time in a long while, Adam felt the weight in his chest ease, replaced by something fragile and new. Not hope exactly, but the courage to remain present, to face whatever came next without running. The message arrived at 2:17 a.m., vibrating softly against the wooden table beside Noah's bed. He didn't hear it at first. Sleep had wrapped him in that heavy, dreamless state where memories sink to the bottom and stop hurting. But the vibration came again, insistent, as if it knew it carried something that refused to wait for morning. Noah opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling, counting his breaths until his heartbeat slowed. He reached for the phone without looking, expecting nothing more than a notification or a wrong number call. When he saw the link, his thumb froze. It was from an unknown number. No text. Just a link. For reasons he couldn't explain, a familiar unease crawled into his chest. He locked the phone and placed it face down, as if the screen itself could see him. For a long moment, he considered turning it off, pretending it had never arrived. He had spent years mastering the art of avoidance. It was how he survived. Morning came with pale light slipping through the curtains. The city outside stirred, indifferent to the knot in Noah's stomach. He made coffee he barely tasted and sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the phone. The link waited patiently. He finally opened it. The video began with silence, then the sound of breathing, uneven and close. The camera adjusted, and a face appeared on the screen. His chest tightened so suddenly it hurt. Sarah. Her hair was shorter, darker at the roots. Fine lines framed her eyes, but they were still the same eyes that once looked at him as if he were something solid in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. "If you're watching this," she said softly, "it means I found the strength to let the past speak." Noah swallowed hard. His fingers trembled. "I don't know where you are now," she continued, her gaze flickering away from the camera, then back. "Or who you've become. But I need to tell my story, even if you're the only one who ever hears it." The words pulled him backward through time. He remembered the small apartment they'd shared, the peeling paint, the laughter that echoed off bare walls. He remembered promises spoken casually, as if time were endless. He remembered the night he chose silence over honesty, fear over love. In the video, Sarah took a slow breath. "When you left," she said, "I told myself I was strong enough to carry everything alone. I told myself love wasn't supposed to hurt this much." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I never told you that I was pregnant." The room seemed to shrink. Noah felt the air leave his lungs as if someone had struck him. "I found out 2 weeks after you disappeared," she said. "I tried calling you. Your number was disconnected. I wrote messages I never sent. I waited for a sign that you would come back." She paused, pressing her lips together. "I lost the baby during my 4th month." Noah bent forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. A low sound escaped his throat, something between a sob and a gasp. The world he thought he understood fractured, rearranging itself around this truth. I don't blame you, Sarah said quietly. I blamed myself for a long time. For not telling you sooner. For believing love alone could fix everything. But blame gets heavy when you carry it too long. She looked directly into the camera then, her eyes steady. I'm sending this because I finally learned that silence doesn't protect anyone. It only leaves wounds where words should have been. The video ended. Noah sat there long after the screen went dark. His coffee had gone cold. His hands shook. Every memory of Sarah replayed itself, now altered by what he hadn't known. He saw the signs he'd ignored, the moments he'd brushed aside because facing them would have required him to grow up. That day, he walked. The link sat unread in his messages for 3 days, glowing softly on the cracked screen of his phone like a quiet accusation. Adam had seen it arrive late at night, just after he'd shut the window to keep out the cold and the distant sirens, just after he'd told himself that tomorrow would be different. He hadn't opened it because opening it would mean admitting that some things never really stayed buried. On the 4th morning, the city woke under a gray sky, the kind that pressed down on the chest. Adam sat on the edge of his bed, feet on the cold floor, and finally tapped the link. The video loaded slowly. The first sound was a familiar breath, uneven and close to the microphone, followed by a voice he had not heard in 7 years. If you're watching this, the voice said, it means I found the courage to send it. Or I didn't, and someone else did for me. Adam's throat tightened. He didn't need to see the face to know whose voice it was. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, as if the weight of his body might anchor him. The room smelled faintly of dust and old coffee. Outside, a bus roared past. The video continued. The camera shook a little, then steadied. Her face filled the screen, older than he remembered, thinner, but unmistakably her. Lena. The woman he had loved with a kind of devotion that frightened him, and lost through a silence he had never learned to forgive himself for. I don't know how to start, she said, offering a small, tired smile. I practiced this 100 times. I always thought if I ever spoke to you again, it would be in person. But life doesn't care about our plans. Adam's fingers curled around the phone. His heart hammered so loudly he was sure she could hear it, even across years and pixels. She spoke about ordinary things at first. About the town she'd moved to by the sea, about how the mornings smelled of salt and wet wood, about a stray cat that slept on her porch and refused to be named. She laughed once, softly, and the sound cut through him sharper than any accusation. Then her expression changed. The smile faded, replaced by something heavier. I'm sending this because there are things you never knew, she said. And because I'm tired of carrying them alone. The word alone landed like a blow. Adam remembered the last night they'd stood together, rain pouring between them, words tangled and sharp. He had told her he needed space. She had asked him how long. He hadn't answered. The next morning, she was gone. In the video, Lena took a breath, steadying herself. When you stopped calling, I told myself it was temporary. That you were overwhelmed. I tried to be patient. But weeks turned into months. And I was pregnant. Adam's vision blurred. He sucked in air, his lungs burning. The room tilted slightly. Pregnant. The word echoed, reshaping every memory he had of that time. He remembered her hands resting on her stomach once, absent-mindedly, and how he'd joked about her eating too much bread. Shame crawled up his spine. I didn't tell you, she went on, her voice firm despite the moisture in her eyes. I was angry. And scared. And proud. I thought if you wanted to be there, you would come back on your own. I lost the baby 3 months later. The silence that followed felt endless. Adam pressed his palm against his mouth, stifling a sound that wanted to tear free. His chest hurt as if something inside had cracked open. I don't tell you this to hurt you, Lena said quietly. I'm not angry anymore. I needed you to know who I was becoming during that time. I needed you to know that the person you left was stronger than you thought, but also more fragile. Adam stared at her face, memorizing every line, every flicker of emotion. He wanted to reach through the screen, to apologize until the words lost all meaning. The video ended with her looking directly into the camera, eyes